Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Tiana here once again, and I am back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Princess Peach Showtime for the Nintendo Switch. So, last time, we've essentially did manage to take care of the forms of a play, for the sake of the forms of not only for Figure Skater Peach, but also with the forms of Detective Peach as well. So overall, we actually did those stages no problem, except the fact that, well, unfortunately though, I'm somehow missing one of those Sparkle Gems in Journey forms within Figure Skater Peach, but that's okay though, because eventually at some point, we'll be back for that particular stage, eventually. So, and also in addition to that though, is about the fact that we also did manage to able to take care of, well, the second boss in the game, which appears to be by the forms of Light Thing. So overall, we actually did that boss fight no problem. So today for this video is about the fact that we're going to be continuing things on and move on to floor 3. So in some cases though, it's about the fact that we might able to actually come across into not only for the sake of the forms of 2 new plays, based off from certain transformations we haven't exactly turned into yet, but also about the fact that when it comes to familiar plays, ranging from Cowgirl as well as Patisserie, or specifically Baker, or anything else like that, that we might able to actually come across into Act 2, variants for the sake of the forms of some plays. So either way, let's hop right into the forms of a new play for now. And that's what appears to be Mighty Mission Alien Invasion. So something tells me about the fact that we're about to able to try to save those citizens thanks to the forms of a new transformation, as I think I've already on about that already. So either way, yeah, let's get to it, shall we? So of course, if you couldn't tell already, yes, from now on though, we're about to be wearing the forms of a Light Thing dress for now. Just because from the look of all that stuff though, she just turns into like a green dress with some purple things here and there. So yeah, that's actually quite interesting for that particular dress choice. So either way. So yeah, a few things I want to talk about this is about the fact that, well, today's date, of course, there is the 23rd of April today, in some cases in 2024 today, and guess what everybody, only one more month left until Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door remake for the Nintendo Switch is almost just around the corner, which as a result, still I'm very excited for that game, especially noticeable I can finally get a chance to able to be playing through, you know, the actual amazing Paper Mario game on the go, so that way I don't have to rely on the forms of, well, let's just say, if I was about to able to tackle through, without doubt, the hardest challenge in the whole entire game, specifically with Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door in mind, that I don't have to worry about the forms of trying to switch off the game or something, which, then again though, we'll probably save that particular topic until for later, so for now, it looks like there's a lot of chaos that's been going on, specifically, not only for there's a lot of UFOs, but it's also about the fact that there's a bit of fire, and relatively speaking, we do need to able to activate this fountain, so that way we can able to proceed. So, and that way we should able to get ourselves the Sparkle Gem, no problem. And unfortunately though, yeah, I accidentally missed one back there. But then again though, we'll be back for this particular stage eventually, which sure enough though, that might be seems to be the case. So, anyways though, there's also another thing I want to point out as well, and that's what appears to be about the fact, as you probably already know, unexpectedly, is that Piglet decided able to actually go back onto Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, specifically on Mission Mode, but that's just mainly because that was the only thing he hasn't tackled for this point yet, especially noticeable because, unlike the forms of how it does it in Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, alongside with Team Sonic Racing, that's basically though about the fact, I believe, that Sonic, alongside with the forms of Daffy as well, that they both managed able to immediately jump right in to the forms of not only World Tour, but also with Team Adventure right from the get-go, between 2 games respectively, whilst unlike in Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing on the other hand, that basically though back in 2017, that Piglet did somehow only tackle through Grand Prix back in 2017, but then guess what, in 7 years later, in Journey forms of this year in 2024, he finally decided able to tackle through Mission transformation mode. Specifically, the only difference is this time around though is that obviously he's now going to be playing through the PlayStation 3 version, because it really doesn't matter what version he's going to be tackling through, because I'm pretty sure you're going to be playing as the exactly same characters as depending on what version of the game he's playing on. Either on the PS3 version, or the Xbox 360 version, or the Wii version, or the PC version. The only thing is missing, on the other hand though, is that I don't think it's possible he's going to be playing as not only avatars, but also Miis, as well as Banjo and Kazooie, so... Wow, that transformation looks super duper cool. Like, 20% cooler, as far as I was gonna say. Or should I say, 100% awesomeness? So yes, here we have ourselves Mighty Peach, which, kind of think about it, the actual look of the outfit, or that particular transformation more like, it kind of reminds me like a similar vibes as in Baymax from the likes of Big Hero 6, and also same applies with Hero as well, but it's also about the fact that it does kind of reminds me of Buzz Lightyear almost. Well, the reason why I say this is because we'll explain more about that if we try to keep on saving those citizens, so while trying to able to destroy a bunch of UFOs. So, and once we've done so already, something tells me we can able to actually obtain ourselves a whole batch of Sparkle Gems as far as this is concerned. And every once in a while, just like the forms of how it does it on some transformations, is that obviously we have to do some bit of combat here and there. So, exponentially speaking, I was about the fact that this stage is actually pretty cool though, to me though. Not only because it takes place in a futuristic setting, but it's also about the fact that I just really love the actual attitude that Peach is actually acting out if she decides able to turn into Mighty Peach. Like, she can able to lift up things, specifically cars, vehicles, you name it. So yeah, she's really cool. Especially that, then again, it does kind of reminds me of the forms of Baymax and Hero from the likes of Big Hero 6, because no matter what though, it's about the fact that since we are in 2024 right now, this means we can probably able to actually decide able to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the film's release of Big Hero 6, not until specifically in November this year, specifically in the American version, because I have no idea why that back in the day about the fact that the UK version has to wait until for about a couple of months later, specifically in February. So I've obviously have no idea why does Disney decide able to release certain films later on throughout the films of the UK's life cycle, which it feels very similar situation as the films of how it does it for right now, for the likes of the films of not only for Puss in Boots The Last Wish for DreamWorks, but also with Kung Fu Panda 4 as well. Well, despite the fact that Kung Fu Panda 4 did somehow release the actual film in the UK version for about a few weeks later, compared to the forms of how it does it in the American version for specific release dates capacity for the sake of the forms of March month. So, but anyway, talking of which though actually, is about the fact that recently, for I've noticed something, is that recently, during the forms within, let's just say, sometime in 2026, they did somehow manage to able to make a list, in Wikipedia anyway, they did mention about the fact that how many films we can expect able to get for the likes of the films of 2026. So, specifically, we've actually got ourselves a grand total of quite a lot, or quite a few actually so far, whilst later on they'll add even more films later down the road. Well, I'll explain more about that for later, because for now, there's also some another things I want to point out as well. For instance, unfortunately though, is about the fact that for those of you guys who are very excited able to actually check out the Donkey Kong Country attraction for the sake of the films of the Super Nintendo world in Japan, unfortunately though, that particular attraction has been delayed and during the forms of at some point later on in 2024. Well, to be more specifically, it's now going to be released until late 2024. So it could be either be October, November, or December, depending on the forms of the actual specific stuff that's been going on. Which, as a result, it was originally going to be able to, like, basically release the actual thing in public during the forms of been sometime in spring, although we know on Spring right now, but unfortunately though, as you probably already know, that ride has now been, or specifically, Donkey Kong Country attraction from the Super Nintendo world in the Japan has now been delayed, sadly. So because of that though, yeah, it feels very similar to me though, as the forms of how it does it back in sometime in 2018, where basically they did somehow first announce Mario Plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle for the sake of the forms of the DLC, which appears to be Donkey Kong Adventure. But unfortunately though, is that it was originally going to be on spring in 2018, but somehow it's been delayed until summer in 2018. So thankfully it doesn't take that long to release, whilst unlike in Donkey Kong Country, on the forms of the Super Nintendo world in Japan, has to wait even slightly longer until when it's finally optimized, or specifically when it's about to be ready, so everything else will be come to expect when it comes to like testing for rides and all that stuff. So you probably need the rest of it. So anyways, as you can see, we've now decided to become almost like Buzz Lightyear almost, because as you can see, we now ended up in the skies above, while trying to able to beat the likes of not only UFOs, but also with the forms of certain ships every once in a while. And then, as soon as you're able to try to rescue all of these, citizens on that particular point, then obviously though you will able to get yourselves a Sparkle Gem. And now we come to the last part of the actual level, where basically we have to counterattack right onto this particular thing, and then basically we have to mash the B button the insane amount of times until you're able to actually spin him around while trying to able to destroy more of those specific ships. And something tells me I'm going to be able to do with even more button mashing right there. And once you've done so, wow, that is a satisfying conclusion right there. But of course, that doesn't stop there, because we will be able to come across into second act, enjoying forms of Mighty Peach until for later. So yeah, I will say, this particular stage is awesome. So because of that though, despite the fact that I accidentally missed, for that particular Sparkle Gem in the beginning, but don't worry, we'll be back for that eventually. So either way, anyway, there's also another thing I want to point out as well, and that's what appears to be about the fact that recently, Zootopia 2 has recently starting to do the voice work. So, still I'm very excited about the forms of Zootopia 2, or Zootropolis 2, depending on what region you lived in. My guess is about the fact in the UK version, it's still gonna call it Zootropolis, whilst compared to other regions, it's still gonna call it Zootopia, basically. So because of that though, still I'm very excited with the forms of the sequel of Zootropolis is going to be happening during at some point and during the forms of it next year for sure. So, but either way though, that'll be a topic for a later time, because for now we're about to take care of the forms of the next play in Floor 3, and that's what appears to be none other than Cowgirl at Dusk. So in some cases this is Act 2 for the actual Cowgirl play. So, but obviously as to be expected, about the fact that, well, obviously since we're on Act 2, and eventually at some points once we get to Act 3, obviously though we are still able to stuck around with the forms of that transformation for the majority of the forms of certain plays and acts every once in a while. So, yeah, and kind of think about it, it's been quite some time since we've last played as Cowgirl Peach since the very beginning. So, yeah, time flies, doesn't it? So, anyway, there's also another thing I want to point out as well, is potentially speaking of, is about the fact that recently, I've noticed something, that Inside Out 2 crew counts with 150 animators, the largest team of animators ever for a Pixar film, which I think is actually quite impressive for me though, plus it's mainly because no matter what though, I'm pretty sure about the fact that we've only got about a couple of weeks left now until Inside Out 2 is going to be releasing on the big screen, specifically on the cinemas, which I'm also looking forward to, especially notable because I would love to see of what's going to happen, and in addition to that, maybe some new characters we're able to actually bring up. And, well, we already know about that ever since when Maxi has already mentioned about that, since in Journey Forms of in Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 playthrough, specifically in Silver Story. So as a result, nothing else checks out there, at least as far as the actual things to discuss on that front. So, I believe for the majority of the forms of this act anyway, as you can tell, that basically we have to catch a ride with the horse throughout the majority of the forms of this entire play. So, But, you know, then again though is about the fact that if we ended up missing some of those sparkle gems, then obviously we were still able to be coming back into this every once in a while, joining later on anyway, so... But anyway, this is all automated too, so you don't have to press anything, because obviously though, the horse goes continuously forward, so you don't have to worry about the forms of trying to able to slow down, or even speed up at one point, so... There we go, another sparkle gem right here. So, and this is where we got able to time our jumps correctly. Because whenever I got to this point, I, for some reason, just keep on messing with my jumps at one point. Because obviously, though, I can't really tell of the actual audio cue, or specifically, I can't really tell of the forms of the visual cue that I have to press the A button at the right time. So just in case I can able to actually get on top of the train. So, speaking of which though, this particular bit right there does kind of reminds me like a similar vibes as in Toy Story 3 for the video game anyway. Just because for one, you can able to actually just to catch a ride with the horse in the beginning portion of the play. And second, is that once we get to the second half, and during the forms of this entire play, that we are able to actually get onto the train itself. And relatively speaking though, is about the fact that, well, obviously we need to take care of the forms of those specific sour bunches though. And before we continue our progressioning right here, there's another bonus area right in there. So obviously we have to save all of those citizens for those barrels, just like the forms of how it does it since in, well, the beginning portion of the Cowgirl segment. And once we've done so, then obviously we get ourselves a nice little sparkle gem in the process. So, yeah, it should be pretty easy. But, anyway, yeah, as I said, it's actually very impressive about the fact that there's a bunch of, or there's actually quite a lot of animators for working on Inside Out 2, which is pretty impressive, all things considered. So, anyway, there's also another thing I want to point out as well, is that, unfortunately though, Avatar The Last Airbender movie has officially been delayed until 20th of January in 2026. So, because of that though, yeah, it's going to be another one of those films that's been listed so far for the likes of 2026. So, yeah, that can wait and during at some point in 2 years' time from now on. So, yeah, that's besides the point. And, speaking of delays though, there's also yet another delay, but this time what appears to be by the forms of a closed beta version for the likes of Kingdom Hearts Missing Link, which as a result, yeah, that particular closed beta test of Kingdom Hearts Missing Link has been delayed again. Except this time it's going to be delayed in just about a couple of days for now. To be more specifically, it was originally going to be able to be released on Android for the likes of being 25th of April, which should be about around that time and during the forms of this Thursday, but somehow it's gotta be delayed and during about a week later. So because of that though, at least we haven't got that long for Android users anyway, so that way they can able to actually experience the closed beta version for the sake of the forms of that particular game in mind. So yes, it's kind of maddening whenever I was trying to able to expect. There's like quite a few delays that's been going on for the likes of not only for one thing, but also with another thing and one form or another. So yeah, it seems kind of strange. So, oh yeah, in this particular part right there, we have to able to grab the forms of the barrel by simply using the lasso. So that way we can able to actually toss the barrel right onto that particular fire pit on the back of the train, so just in case that particular train is almost going to be damaged. And something tells me about the fact that this is going to be the final part of the forms of this act, because once we're done with that, then obviously though we can able to expect that we can able to actually unlock, not only for the sake of the forms of that particular moment where, oh jeez, something tells me I do need able to use the lasso right onto that particular top part right here, or specifically with this little funnel right there, and that way we basically done with the forms of Cowgirl at Dusk. So, kind of an interesting action-packed stage kind of thing about it, which then again though, it does reminds me of the forms of one of the first levels you can able to play during the forms of in Toy Story 3, the video game as a matter of fact. So yeah, it's actually quite entertaining to say the least. So, but anyways, so as soon as we're done with that, then we can able to actually access to yet another color scheme for Stella's ribbon. and that way we can able to actually customize her and during at some point later down the road. So relatively speaking, I was about the fact that since we did somehow completely done Act 2 for the forms of Cowgirl play, and so much so we can able to actually access to yet another level somewhere in Journey Forms within a basement floor. So, in fact, I might actually start to focus on that right now, actually, because something tells me, for those of you probably wondering, yes, the entire time length for this video is ridiculously shorter compared to the forms of how it does on the previous parts so far. Well, that's just mainly because no matter what, though, every once in a while is that in Journey Forms within Act 2, portions in some plays, in addition to Act 3 as well, certain stages are a little bit shorter than the forms of how it does it for the first act, but that's just mainly because on the first act, you have to experience with the forms of certain transformations for the first time, so makes sense, all things considered. So, but anyway, so let's just go ahead and slide down with those specific little I don't know, guardrails or something like that. So in some cases though, we can able to do that automatically. If you try to able to go onto the far left, or it's hard to explain because I already know for a fact it's been about 5 days ago now since we've last played this game for sure, but I do know for certain thing, for one thing in mind, that recently, speaking of which, that you probably already know about the fact that Maxi has already finished up everything for the likes of, well, Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 recently, and no, he did manage to enjoy that particular Let's Play at the very least, despite the fact that Sonic 06 is an incredibly bad game, and in addition to that, Pac-Man he's also did manage to finish up everything for Winnie the Pooh's Rumbly Tumbly Adventure for the Game Boy Advance version so far. Like, I already know for a fact that he was not impressed with that particular game, by the way. Well, that's just mainly because it's just a watered down version of the console version of the game. Understandably so, just because of all his handheld limitations, and you pretty much named the rest of it though. So, and there's another one of those sparklers that we have to save, and we need to able to rescue him before the train gets to him. So, yeah, we must able to actually just act fast, so just in case we don't want to able to waste time on it. So, but I digress. And also, I apologize for the fact that Pac-Man did mistakenly say, during the forms within that finale portion of Winnie the Pooh's Rumbly Tumbly Adventure Game Boy Advance version, that he did accidentally say the 20th anniversary of something related to the forms of one of our favorite shows of all time. Well, he was meant to say the 10th anniversary of the forms of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, which as a result, thanks to someone out there, did somehow manage to able to comment it on it. So because of that, thank you sir for able to actually remind us for that particular error that Pac-Man did somehow mistakenly said. So, I appreciate about that, because you are such a cool user. So, but anyway, there's also another thing I want to point out as well, is that I was originally trying to able to actually mentioning a forms of the continuation of specific announcements that recently that ND World has been announced so far. I already know for a fact that Piglet has technically already mentioned about 2 things so far for the likes of the ND World, but let's just save it for this point right about now. Exponentially speaking though, either me or Piglet can able to actually continuously try to mention about the forms of some more announcements they did bring for the likes of the forms of the most recent ND World during at some point in the next couple of days time or something. So because of that though, despite I found that particular ND Worlds to be, I don't know about you, kind of lackluster to me, which is especially noticeable with the forms of some other ND World presentations in the past. Like, I do know for some highlights though, like for instance with the forms of that particular, you know, Little Kitty Big City looks very promising because it does kind of reminds me like a similar vibes as in Untitled Goose Game, so that's besides the point. So, oh yeah, and speaking of which though, for those of you probably wondering about the fact that there's also going to be a yet another anniversary has recently just somehow happened, and as a result, no matter what though, and suffice to say, during the forms have been, let's just say, 2 days ago, potentially speaking, is that yes, happy 35th anniversary of the game's release of Super Mario Land. In some cases, one of the first ever Mario games to be released on a handheld device, specifically on the Game Boy. Or technically speaking though, whenever you're trying to able to play video game cartridges at one point. So, yeah, it seems very, cool to able to actually look back on during the forms of Super Mario Land for the Game Boy, despite the fact that back then, despite the controls might be felt a bit too similar to, well, Super Mario Bros., except the fact that it's on the Game Boy. So this means we have, like, the exact same amount of buttons as the forms of how it does it on the NES controller, basically. And relatively speaking, though, if I've noticed something is that, yes, indeed, that Super Mario Land was the game that firstly introduced not only the forms of a, let's just say, a Super Bowl flower or anything else like that, which is kind of a weird power-up, because I almost assumed that was going to be a fire flower, but as it turns out, it was actually by the forms of a different power-up, which, later on anyway, though, it did somehow became a thing during the forms of the Super Mario Maker 2 for one of those specific edited power-ups you can able to actually interact with, like specifically the Super Bowl flower. So, relatively speaking, that's actually pretty swell. And it's also the introduction to the one and only Daisy herself, which is actually her first ever debut on that. So, and I still have no idea about the fact that it really baffles my mind about the fact that when it comes to the forms of Super Mario Land was not being appeared in the forms of the Nintendo Switch online subscription services, which it still really bothers me about the fact that I almost assumed they, well, obviously they did somehow manage to able to add it in, Super Mario Land 2 6 golden coins back in during the forms of in last year, but for whatever reason, Nintendo decided able to actually not include Super Mario Land in Journey forms of one of those Game Boy library of games in Journey forms of the Nintendo Switch online subscription services. So, no idea why though, but maybe they'll add it in eventually in the future, specifically either in Journey forms of in this month, or to be more specifically next month. It really depends on it really, because no matter what though, the internet has gone all over the place when it comes to forms of not only rumors, but also with more leaks as well. So because of that though, yeah, not too surprising. So because of that though, yeah, we did somehow manage to complete this stage, despite the fact that not only did we somehow miss one of those Sparkle Gems, but also with 2 Sparkle Gems, because according to the forms of that X mark, as we saw familiar, this means, unfortunately though, we failed one of those specific challenges. Specifically, try not to let that particular train carts get damaged, so as a result, yeah, I have to come back into that stage eventually, so this might take a bit of while, folks, especially noticeable because no matter what though, I'm pretty sure the depth perception might mess me up at one point, so, but on the positive side of things though, I really like the actual dress what Peach is wearing right now. It kind of reminds me of the forms of how Rarity managed able to wear one of those fashion dresses during the forms of it, let's just say, in My Little Pony Equestria Girls with all this particular carousel ponies attached to it or something. Well, it's hard for me to explain about this because I know for a fact I don't normally watch that much of Equestria Girls that much. Well, that's just mainly because I'm pretty much more accustomed to the forms of the regular pony forms for certain characters to me though, but that's besides the point as well. So, but yeah, as I said before, there's nothing else I could really add to this though, aside from the fact that this video is actually really short. But hopefully, during the later parts anyway, it should be able to actually go into much more lengthy videos, I'm pretty sure. So with that being said, folks, is that we get the endings of this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Princess Peach Showtime. Is that we're about to tackle through more plays, specifically Patisserie Peach, as well as a new transformation, as well as the 3rd boss. So I'll see you guys until on Thursday. Later, fellas.